Hello everyone, welcome to Everything Arsenal, and this is your latest news updates. Just got done watching the FA Cup games. I really missed the FA Cup. Most of you missed the FA Cup. The last couple of seasons, it hasn't really gone well for us, but watching these other games, you're like, man, I really missed the FA Cup. I cannot wait for us to get back there and get back to Wembley. But we have other trophies to fight for this season, and a lot to talk about today as well. And let's get straight into it. As always, let me know what you make about everything that we talk about today. There's a lot of transfer news to talk about today. So let's start with the first one that came out from Charles Watts. So the writing is a bit small, but I'm going to read it out for you. So this is what Charles Watts had to say about this. It's no great secret that Arsenal want to sign a striker this summer. When the window opens, it will be the priority, along with midfielder and potentially another wide attacker. It will be interesting to see whether they move for Victor Osimhen. He is a player they like, and I know his representatives have visited Arsenal's training ground for talks with Edu. Those talks took place in the summer when Arsenal eventually signed Gabriel Jesus. Jesus was always the priority that year, but Osimhen is definitely a player they viewed as a serious alternative. That interest will remain, but it could prove to be too costly an option in the summer. In a summer, Arsenal want to spread their budget around as they look to take the squad to the next level. So that's the latest in terms of Arsenal's search for a striker. We are definitely going to sign a striker this summer. We know about that. You're going to talk about Edin Ketia later on. Gabriel Jesus, I don't know. I thought he was definitely going to be here next season, but at the moment it looks like it's 65%, 35%. You never know. He might end up leaving. Hopefully, personally for me, I would definitely keep Jesus. Maybe not as a starting striker. He can always come on as a sub. He can start out some other games. He can play on the wing for us as well. So he's a player definitely like to keep at Arsenal, but we definitely need a striker. At the moment, it's not looking like we need a striker because we're scoring a bunch of goals. But just imagine the number of goals you're scoring. If we add a striker on top of that, we are going to score a lot more. You're going to score like 100+ goals. And in most of those games, the 6 goals could become 8. The 5 goals could become 7. The 4 goals we score could become 7 as well, So Osimhen is a player we've been looking at since we signed Gabriel Jesus, since before we signed Gabriel Jesus. But I guess Jesus became available that summer after Man City signed Haaland, and Arteta went for it straight away. Let's get Gabriel Jesus. Is going to fit in well in our team, and I think he has up to now. I think he has fit in well. So Osimhen is a player we're looking at, and these reports also came out yesterday from Team Talk saying Chelsea fear they will miss out on Victor Osimhen in the summer, with PSG and Arsenal nudging ahead in the race to sign the striker. So according to reports, Arsenal and PSG are ahead of Chelsea in terms of signing Osimhen in the race to sign Osimhen. And listen, it's not going to be cheap. You're going to pay a lot of money for him. You're talking about 100 million, and you're going to need to pay 250,000 per week for him, as they said last week in terms of his wages. So it's not easy. It's not going to be an easy deal. And personally, for me, I've been saying the last couple of months, I'd not be surprised if Mbappe doesn't join Real Madrid, if Osimhen ends up there. But if Mbappe joins Real Madrid like the way we're expecting, I'd not be surprised if Osimhen is the one that PSG go for to replace Kylian Mbappe. So there's not too many teams that currently going for him. Chelsea, Arsenal, PSG, and maybe Real Madrid can come out of nowhere. You never know. Like, a lot of things can change in the summer. Like, you never know. Lewandowski could end up leaving Barcelona, and then Barcelona searching for a striker. They go for Osimhen. Vlahovic can move away from Juventus, and then they end up signing Osimhen from Napoli. All those usually happen, like players moving from to Juventus from Lazio and from Napoli and from all those teams. That usually happens. So let's hope that we get a striker though. Osimhen, you're definitely looking at. Let's see how that one goes. The thing is, as they say, the budget. If we pay 100 million plus for Osimhen, does that affect the rest of our transfer window? Maybe if you have like a budget of 150 million, maybe they'd prefer to spend it around for 4 players. But whoever is going to get Osimhen is definitely going to get a proper player. Now, Osimhen is not the only striker we're looking at. Sesko from Leipzig is another one that we're looking at. According to reports, Arsenal are keeping tabs on RB Leipzig striker Benjamin Sesko ahead of the summer transfer window, with club scouts recommending the player to Mikel Arteta on numerous occasions this season. Sesko is perceived to have a good value release clause in his contract worth 43 million, due to become active when the transfer window reopens. This is according to Give Me Sports. So Sesko is another player who's being linked to Arsenal. Is also linked to Chelsea as well. I've watched a couple of Leipzig games this, and I've not really been impressed. Like, if I were to ask me for my top 3 list of strikers that I'd want, he'd not be anywhere near that top 3 list. But he would be cheaper, 43 million. He is younger than the others, so he kind of fits the age bracket that you're looking at in terms of building an absolute giant for the next 5, 6, 7 years. He fits in that perfectly. But we are definitely going to be looking for a striker. Remember, Gyökeres as well is a striker we are looking at from Sporting, former Coventry player. We could end up getting this one as well. There'll definitely be a lot of striker movement this transfer window. So let's hope that at least one of them ends up becoming an Arsenal player, this Gyökeres or Osimhen or whoever else we are linked to. But that's it in terms of a striker talk. That's not the only thing Charles Watts talked about in terms of the transfer window that you're looking to have. He also pointed out a few things about the midfield. Again, the writing is a bit small, but I'll read it to you. According to Charles Watts, I do expect Arsenal to sign a midfielder this summer, but a lot will depend on what happens with the midfielders they currently have. Ideally, they would like Jorginho to stay, and they would have to sort out Thomas Partey's future. Partey still has a year left on his deal, or just like last summer, Arsenal would not stand in his way of leaving should a decent offer arrive. Should that happen, then they would have to replace him, and Zubimendi is a player they believe can play the Partey role. Mikel Arteta knows Zubimendi well and is a big admirer, but there is uncertainty around whether he actually wants to leave Real Sociedad. There is also expected to be strong rival interest, so it might not be an easy deal to get done. Now, let's start with the first part of that, where he says it depends on what happens with the current midfielders. Now, for Jorginho, I definitely want us to keep Jorginho, but obviously, if we keep him, he's not going to be like a regular starter. Like this season and last season, he's played more games than we expected him to because Partey has been injured and we've really had to depend on him. And in most of those games, he's really done well for us. He's provided the Champions League experience for us, the passing from the midfield positions, the experience, that's the main thing, the experience that he has for us in midfield. And he doesn't mind sitting on the bench and coming on. He doesn't mind starting a game and coming off. He doesn't mind it at all. And I think he's a very good team player from what I've heard from all the other his other players, the other players playing next to him. So Jorginho is a player I'd definitely keep for next season. Not as a definite starter, but a player who's going to rotate well with whoever we have there in the number 6 position. Now, the other player we have there in the number 6 position is Thomas Partey. Will he be here next season? Listen, the injuries are the problem. Partey is a very, very good player, but the injuries are the problem. If you keep him again for next season and then in August he gets injured again and then it's out until February, you'll start thinking, hey, we should have sold him and gotten even 10, 50 million for him and use that money elsewhere. If would he be happy to stay and be a backup, like a complete backup, like you have Zubimendi and Jorginho and Declan Rice all there and then Partey play some games? Or do we definitely need to sell him and use that money in terms of the wages that he's getting paid? We offer that to someone else and get rid of Partey because he's not going to sign a new contract. I don't think he's going to sign a new contract at all. It's either he leaves right now or he leaves next, and I don't think he's going to be here for longer than that. Also, his age is getting a bit older, just like Jorginho, but Jorginho is regularly fit, so that's the only wrong thing with Partey, the injuries. Quality, he definitely has the quality, but in terms of him getting injured, it's a problem. Now, I said I'm going to give my answer in terms of Partey at the end of the season. Let's see how he does between now and the end of the season in terms of staying fit and all that. If he's able to stay fit this season, I don't expect him to play regularly, but if the games he plays, like his man of the match category and he puts in man of the match performances and he turns out to be very, very important for us once again, maybe we might have to keep him for another year and have different options in midfield. But as I said, the problem is the wages and the injuries and all that. The wages can be used elsewhere, and the players that are on high wages, the likes of Odegaard and Partey and those guys, is really the only one who can be sold from that list of Saka, Odegaard, and all those guys. Is really the only one who can be sold to make way for wages for our team, whoever we are signing. But I'll give my answer on Thomas Partey and at the end of the season. Let's see how he does between now and the end of the season. That's the first part of that tweet from Charles Watts. He also talked about Partey having 1 year. I've talked about that. And Zubimendi being a replacement. Now, if Zubimendi joins Arsenal, that potentially means Declan Rice plays as our permanent number 8. Yes, some games he's going to play as a number 6. Some games you're going to play a double pivot with Rice and someone else in midfield. But Zubimendi joining us will be a huge deal. And he's also talked about being competition at the end of that. I really don't care about competition. Since we signed Declan Rice and all those guys, Havertz, Rare, those players who are linked to several teams, I feel like when Atsene do want you, we are going to get him, especially since he's coming from Spain and all that. It would be easier for us to get him, and I feel like he'd definitely want to join Arsenal, unless someone like a Real Madrid or Barcelona come in for him, and his dream has always been to play for one of those teams. Maybe that would be a bit hard when it comes to that. But in terms of leaving Spain, I'd put us as favorites to get him if we really, really want him. Now, he would be an absolutely class signing. Like if you have Zubimendi there and you have Declan Rice there and you have the options of Jorginho as well to come on for Zubimendi. He's a player who can play a lot of games in a row. That can only be beneficial for us. And on top of that, he's not going to cost you 100 million. So it fits into our budget. Maybe 50 at most, I'd say 50, maybe 60 at most. But we'd be able to take that down to like 50 or something. Let's see what happens with that deal. But he's a player that I definitely want at Arsenal. Zubimendi for sure. I would definitely get him. Now I talked about Jorginho and Partey. I forgot to talk about Elneny. We know that Elneny is going to leave. So if Elneny and Partey both leave, we have a midfield gap there and we have to fill it. Now, if it's not Zubimendi, could it be Amadou Onana? Now, there's news on Amadou Onana from Charles Watts as well. He says Amadou Onana could be the one to watch out for. There are a lot of links with him in January. I was told at the time that there was nothing concrete in that speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone us to look at when the season ends. So Amadou Onana is another one we look at. We are looking at I'd be very surprised if we ended up getting like a Zubimendi and Onana, both of them, because it looks like this transfer window you're going to go for like 4 players. As Charles Watts has said, one will be a striker, one could be a winger, one a midfielder, and a goalkeeper if Ramsdale leaves. So I'm expecting that to be our 4 signings. If we end up getting an Amadou Onana and Zubimendi, that means you're going to get 5 players. And I don't think you're going to make that many signings. I think the most you're going to make is 4. I think they're going to look to fill in the places that we don't have. I think defensive-wise, we might end up keeping everyone and not really sign a defender. Even Timber is fit, Tomiyasu is fit. That's why they're all signing new contracts. Tomiyasu signed a contract. Ben White has signed a contract. Gabriel signed a contract not long ago. Saliba signed a contract not long ago. I don't expect Zinchenko to leave as well. I think he's going to be in next, and unless something happens through the transfer window and he ends up leaving. But most of the defenders, I expect them to be here. Cedric potentially leaves, but the rest stay the same. Timber and all those guys remain at us, so I don't expect us to really be fighting for a defender. Midfield-wise, we definitely need to get a midfielder and then striker and a winger, someone to back up Saka. Let's see. But Amadou Onana is a player we are looking at. We are looking at him in January. He's a player who's going to, in terms of technical ability, I think Zubimendi is better. In terms of the feistiness and all that, I think Zubimendi would be the preference for me. In terms of, the Premier League experience and the size, the big guy in midfield, then Onana ticks those boxes. But let's see what happens. I think we're definitely going to get at least one of them. If I was to choose, I'd say Zubimendi. Actually, if I was to choose, I wouldn't mind both of them. If you have options of Jorginho and then you still have Reiss, you still have Zubimendi, and you have Onana, I'd be buzzing. Now, I do expect us to sign Zubimendi, but if Partey ends up leaving as well, I wouldn't be surprised if they also try to go for Onana. But let's see how that one works out. It's going to be really interesting to see how we sort out that midfield problem. So we are looking at those 2 players, Zubimendi and Onana. So that's the latest in terms of the striker talk and the midfield talk. But as I said, there's players who are going to leave Arsenal. Some that we want, some that we don't want to leave. And Reiss Nelson looks to be one of them. According to reports today from Sports Pit, Brighton are keeping tabs on Arsenal winger Reiss Nelson ahead of a potential summer move. Sources have told Football Insider. Arsenal are hopeful that Nelson could fetch a fee between 25 million and 30 million if he does leave this summer. So, out of these 4 players I'm going to talk about, I expect at least 3 of them to leave this transfer window. Or let's say, maybe that is too much. Let's say out of these 4 players I'm going to mention, I'm expecting at least 2 of them to leave. So the English boys, Ramsdale, Nketiah, Nelson, Smith-Rowe. I expect at least 2 of them to leave. Some might feel they don't have too much to play at, too much game time, and they don't really have a role to fit in the Arsenal team, Ramsdale and also. Now, in terms of role, Ramsdale and Smith-Rowe have a role in the Arsenal team, but it's not regular. Like a backup goalkeeper, definitely the backup goalkeeper. Ramsdale would fit in well there, but he wants to be a regular starter in whichever team. So we might have to sell him. Smith Rowe as well is a very quality player who needs minutes. Maybe the solution for Smith Rowe would be to send him on another loan. 3-4 years ago, he sent him on 2 loans, one in the Championship and one in Germany. Maybe I wouldn't mind sending Smith Rowe on a loan deal. I still don't want to sell him. For Nelson and Ketia, it's a little bit different. If you can get 25 million to 30 million for Reiss Nelson, yes, in terms of fitting as our backup winger for both Martinelli and Saka, can play on both sides. He comes off the bench and brings some energy. That's the one thing I'm going to give him. He always comes off the bench and brings energy. It's not too many times I look at Nelson coming on and I'm like, yeah, he's coming to stink up the place. So he's done absolutely poorly since he came on. No, like he brings something, the speed, the pressing and all that. He brings something to the team, but he's not going to be a regular, especially if we end up signing a winger like we've been told. That means Nelson does not have a space there, because that means we have Saka, we have Trossard, we potentially have Jesus who can play on the wing as well. We have Martinelli. Listen, if Smith Rowe stays as well as another player who can play on the wing, that just takes the likes of Nelson even further down the pecking order. So Reiss Nelson is a player who's been looked at by Brighton. So would you guys be willing to sell Nketiah to Brighton, or not Nketiah, sorry, Nelson to Brighton, or would you want to keep him or send him abroad, or maybe even a loan deal? What would you guys want Arsenal to do with Reiss Nelson? Adding Ketia, I think is going to be sold, to be honest. I don't think he's going to be here next season. So out of those 4 players, I would expect 2 of them to go. So potentially Ramsdale and Ketia would be the first ones to leave. And then from Nelson and Smith Rowe, I'd not be surprised if a third one leaves, unfortunately. So Reiss Nelson is done great for us, but listen, still has a role to play this season. We'll see how it does between now and the end of the season. And then he signed a new contract last summer, but it hasn't gotten enough game time. And listen, looking at the left side, you have Martinelli, you have Trossard. We wouldn't really expect him to play. On the right side, Saka plays a lot. Maybe you'd have gotten a few minutes instead of Saka playing every single game. Yes, but Saka always plays. And sometimes Fabi Vieira comes on that wing as well. And on the left side, there's some games I've looked at where I'm like, nah, don't bring Trossard in this one, bring Reiss Nelson, like Aston Villa where they're playing a high line. I want someone with pace like Nelson, but it's a tough one. But Brighton want him for 25 to 30 million. Would you guys be happy 25 to 30 million? Or do you think he's worth more? Now, one of the reasons that Reiss Nelson could be leaving is because we're looking at a winger. But one of the wingers we're looking at, unfortunately, is injury prone, and this is the latest on Pedro Neto. Pedro potentially end of the season for him, very similar to the injury he had on the other side. Gary O'Neill has just confirmed in the press conference. So, as I said, when you're talking about Neto back at the end of January, let's see how he does between now and the end of the season. If he gets injured again, I'm out of that, and he's gotten injured again. So for me, Pedro Neto is not the answer. He gets injured too often, and we have too many injury-prone players. Jesus, Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Partey. It's too much, and we Smith Rowe on top of that as well. We don't really want another one in the team, and Pedro Neto, unfortunately, is injury-prone. So the winger we've been looking at recently as well is Williams from Atletico Bilbao. Not Inaki Williams. The other one, Nico Williams, is the one that we're looking at. So let's see whether we are going to get him. And finally, Eddie Nketiah and Nelson have actually been speaking about Arsenal on Sky, and they were asked about who the best defender in the world is right now, the best defender in the Premier League, and this is what they had. Nketiah said, you have to look at what he's doing at the moment, man. Okay, let me say it how he said it. You have to look at what he's doing at the moment, man. How well we are defending at the back, how much of a threat he is in the opposing box as well. He is so important. He's chipping in with a lot of goals, scoring quite a lot so far. So for me, his aggression is duels, and we see him every day. How aggressive he is, he trains like how he plays. So both of them agree that Gabriel is one of the best defenders in the world right now, so putting him ahead of Saliba. And I think both of them have been like on the same standard, the same level. Both of them have been really, really good, one of the most underrated. I think Saliba is getting his flowers from even the opposition fans, but Gabriel and Ben White is still very, very underrated. And I'm glad to hear that even the teammates know that how good Gabriel is. Like, if you can build that team with Gabriel and Saliba and Reiss for the next 4 or 5 years, if they all stay and Ben White is signing a new contract as well, stays, it can only be a good thing for us. So hopefully we can keep that core of the team the same. And Gabriel has been here since like 2020, so 4 years. He's the one that has stayed here the most out of all those defenders. Yes, Saliba signed before that, but he was out on loan, and Gabriel is the one that has been always been there since 2020, since after we won the FA Cup. So that's all the latest news. Let me know what you make about our midfield search, our striker search, our winger search as well. Backup goalkeeper. We talked about the backup goalkeeper on yesterday's video. On Friday's video, something I think we talked about the goalkeepers that we are looking at. So I'll link it up at the end of this video if you're watching on YouTube. For now, I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you make about all that. Hit the like button, and I will catch up with you guys on the next one.